Mr. Grow It. From the Stash Podcast.
Hey, boys, welcome back.
In person once again.
In person, getting personal. Being together again. I love it, man. Love it. Big shout out to Wink over here. He's also together. They don't realize, but Wink is a part of the tribe. He's right. He's almost arm reach. I thought about touching him a few times, but it get kind of weird, so I don't.
We don't all the time. Not on camera.
No.
He's in the background flipping between the ones and the twos, making sure our audio is crisp and clear, making sure these camera angles are switching smoothly.
Yeah.
Big shout out to Wink.
Yeah, absolutely. Huge shout out to you guys. Hey, this wouldn't be possible. Let's just face it. This would not be possible if it wasn't for you 25,000 people out there that believe in us and hit that subscribe button and remind us that you really dig the content. So we appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
And of course, you want to hit them?
I was going to say, if you're listening in the future and we're at 200 million followers, we appreciate all of you as well.
This was at 25K.
Thank you. This is at 25K. But yeah, actually you hit him because I like the way you're kind of representing it. It's behind you. The blue shirt matches good.
Thank you. Huge shout out to AC Infinity for making us all look so crisp and so clean. ACinfinity.com. You can get the best, the finest equipment when it comes to anything in the grow room. Monitor, circulate. You got it. Water your plants with ACinfinity.com. Use promo code THESTASH15. Save yourself a few dollars off at checkout. And let them know you appreciate them supporting us doing our thing over here.
Man, they got some amazing quality equipment and amazing grow tents. That's one thing that, for me, one of my best grow tents I've ever, no question, has been AC Infinity.
Yeah.
And that's actually kind of relating to the conversation we're going to have here, is growing in a grow tent. Now, we talked about this before.
Part 2.
Yeah, part 2, right? Yeah. When did we do this? You got the facts, right?
May of 2021. If
Don't
I'm
even
looking
have
at
to
my
look it up.
cheat sheet here, slightly off screen. Actually, don't have a date on it, but it was, I think it was 2021 with Welcome to the Grow Tent as a guest.
Hey, GT.
Big shout out to Welcome to the Grow Tent.
Yeah, I believe we've had him on the show a couple times.
Yeah, he was there for a charity.
The charity event.
For
Oh, yeah.
Woo! I remember he coming in Ric Flair, right?
Yeah,
right?
killed it. Killed it.
That was a great epi. If you guys didn't see that one and you want to check it out first, we'll leave a link in the description. You might even check it out on one of the cards that pops up. It's Growing in a Grow Tent with Welcome to the Grow Tent. It's great.
Let's wait while they watch it. We'll
Just wait. We'll wait.
Let's wait.
Well, thank you guys for watching that first. That was great. Welcome back. Grow Tent. 2 years ago when we did this, I wasn't even growing in a tent. And so
you were almost adamant on not growing in a tent.
I was.
I said, do you ever see yourself being in a tent? You're like, no. You said it like very no. That's a stupid question. Don't ask me that.
Get out of here. Yeah. No. It's things have changed. Things have changed. So I think this is going to be a great conversation.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we sparked to this part 2. It's like, hey, now P grows in a tent, so let's talk about it some more. And I'm sure things have probably changed between how we grow in a grow tent, right? Because every year we're changing things, we're improving. So
level up, baby.
I'm sure there will be some things different than what we talked about last time.
Dude, your tent has inspired me in terms of minimal but maximum, because I've got this giant 4x8 that I'm like, man, I should just break that down into 2 4x4s and have 4 4x4s just because how I'm growing, because some synthetic, some organic. But to be able to utilize like a testing space, I need more of that. And grow tents have been the best thing for me to do that versus having an open space with Mylar or poly, just separating the two. It's just more hazardous in terms of potential light leakage, the airflow being different, lack of full control in the environment. So, I mean, grow tents, if you haven't tried one, you can't knock it. But grow tents that are quality, that's a big difference. Because when I first started, I had a crappier one, and I was like, what's the hype, I guess, so I don't have to put a bunch of holes in my ceiling and things in the walls. Cool. But the quality didn't justify it for me until I utilized things like negative air pressure and really having the separation of my grow and the odor control. And I was like, oh, no, I see why people use it.
Yeah, the quality can vary quite a bit. I mean, we talked about AC Infinity. I think we all have AC Infinity tents now. Or I know you have Spider Farmer, which you're really happy.
Oh, yeah, I got no problem.
I have the AC Infinity one. Rob has the AC Infinity one. Happy with those. Gorilla Grow Tent.
I
was using
Gorilla's
them.
solid
Really
too.
good stuff.
One of the original OGs too was Gorilla Grow Tent.
Yeah.
Because the tents 10 years ago were just a joke. Full of holes, zippers copping out.
That's what I was going to say, yeah. But
They were like original LEDs where it was just like, man, there's a couple good companies, but they're way expensive.
Yeah, I got some back in the day. Vivo Sun. They had a bunch of pinhole light leaks and stuff like that. I did get them again years later, and they improved their quality. So, some companies, obviously, they struggle to begin, and they improve, and that was one of the companies that actually improved. But, yeah, you really got to watch it. Look in the reviews, A lot of people will call out the pinhole light leak in reviews. Also, like the quality of the zippers.
And
That's another
huge.
thing that people call out. That can certainly be an issue, like if you're breaking zippers and stuff like that. But yeah, quality. It's in my opinion, it's better to pay a little extra money, extra
Yeah.
$25, maybe even extra $50 to make sure you get that quality.
Yeah, especially the thickness too of the material. When you're assembling it, I've had before cheaper ones that have ripped when I'm trying to bend it over the skeleton, so to speak, the frame that you put
Yep.
together. That sucks. That sucks, especially when you order it online and you're like, oh, I gotta wait until
Yeah, wait another
I
month.
send this back, and then they send me a new one. Okay, so yeah, these plants can wait. They'll just stop growing. It's the worst, man. It's really difficult if you buy cheap. Cheap and affordable are not the same thing. They're dramatically different, honestly. People say, "Oh, it's cheap smoke and it's good." I'm like, it's affordable smoke. It ain't cheap. Same with tents. You can get a cheap tent on Amazon or eBay or anywhere else, and if you don't know what you're looking for, it could sound good, but when you get it, the quality doesn't match up. It could be one of those bait and switches, like podcast studio setup.
Yeah, imagine that. Yeah, and you know what? The thing is like back then, tents weren't multiple layers. Like now you've got at least a minimum of 3 layers on the walls of your tents. I know that's what mine is, 3 put together and laminated or what have you, sewed. I have no idea, but yeah, you've got to be careful because your zipper is going to be what you're using the most. You're in and out of there every single day. Zip, 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 zip. So you want to make sure that it's going to be a quality one and not just one that's heavy duty. The zippers are prime for light leaks themselves because the teeth they're not a light seal between the teeth. So you're going to want to make sure that those zippers have like a good flap over them and they're
Yeah.
covered. And man, AC in particular, they've even now got hookups so you can put the monitor right on the tent.
Yeah, that's dope. I
No
really like that
screwing
part.
in holes to your walls. Just put it right there. They've got cord management. They've got excess amount of venting holes and like the support systems they're providing now. Yeah, I said that I wasn't, or I didn't think I'd see myself in a tent, but now I'm like, a tent? That's the hack. That's
Yeah.
the cheat code. Like most of what you need to be concerned about before you even get started is already dealt with.
Well,
It's
I feel like-
reflective. It's sealed.
Exactly. I was going to say, I feel like you've got it all out of the box. The purists are going to argue that, the same people who will say they taste salt and synthetic flour. But there's no doubt that you can get the same results by building something out.
For sure.
You can do that. But that's the
gonna cost
extra,
you.
exactly, the extra work. And nowadays, the cost. To be able to get it to the point you really want it to be, it's going to cost you more than you will for these tents.
2 years ago, lumber was extreme.
Dude.
It just not even part of the question, right? Why
was
would
like
you spend
crypto.
hundreds of dollars for a few 2x4s?
Yeah.
So it's there was a time now where it's like you spend a couple $100 and you got
People
yourself
out here
Mylar
quit
tent.
pushing bud and they're pushing wood now, because the price
right.
That's the cash crop. I'm growing trees, baby. I think really like you see the difference in advantages for cost effectiveness, but then also for your overall growth. So is there anything you guys noticed from shifting into a full tent like that you had an advantage or you felt that was better other than like, wow, it's already all assembled?
Well, I mean, I think you kind of already touched upon it a little bit, is just having the flexibility to have multiple light cycles. As I've got a 4x4 tent and a 2x4 tent, and I can have a veg light cycle on one and I can have a flower light cycle on the other. So it's like super big advantage, especially if I'm growing like photos and some of these photos are slower than others. I can at least take the ones that are ready to flip to flower and put them into a flower tent, keep the other ones in the veg tent to grow a little bit longer. So flexibility is like huge when it comes to having multiple grow tents, at least for me.
Yeah, one space can hold multiple tents. I'm still using my original garden space, grow room. It's just now my lung room. It's the space that holds my tents. And instead of having one big garden, I now have multiple gardens in a garden, in a lung room. So it's, utilizing, sustainability. We had a conversation that a few episodes ago in regards to improving ways to make this work for you for a long-term sorry.
Yeah,
and so
marathon, baby.
for the marathon, right? So it's going in a tent. It's going to do that for you. And I like the fact that you're not just blowing your humidity all over the place. You're not just blowing photons all over your room. The space is confined enough that those photons bounce around enough and still end up coming on back to the plant. Huge. Same with the moisture. Trying to control the humidity in a 12 by 12 space is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So having control, flexibility, bringing the space into a confined, controllable manageable space is a hack.
Yeah, one other thing I want to mention back up to the actual design of the grow tent is, I know some people have bought and grow tents before and they set it up in their grow space and like, oh, wait a minute, this doesn't have a back door. Some of the grow tents only have that front door. Others have a side door. Some have a door in the back. So if you need that flexibility to be able to walk around to the other side of your tent, unzip something, and access the plants on the back side, make sure you get that feature. And then also the way the ventilation socks are set up, like where they're positioned, kind of visualize it in your room first and figure out, okay, my ventilation is going to have to come out this way. Oh, wait, there's not a ventilation sock on that side. You know what I mean? Most of them do have ventilation socks on both sides and on the top of the tent as well, but there are some that might be in a funky location. So just
that's a great point.
Just definitely keep in mind where that grow tent is going to be in your room and where you're going to need, what sides you're going to need access, and where your ducting is going to be running through.
Yeah.
Make sure it is all going to work for your space.
I didn't think about that. That's a great idea. I've had to cut holes into tents in the past because of that.
Wow.
It's almost defeating the purpose of what I liked about it. I think when you got something for specs, I mean, you even got people like SB. You dig? He's got short, fat tent. You know what I'm saying? You get clone tents. You've got people for breeding now. It's a prime example. Talking with Grow More, Stress Less. I think to be able to have the small environment to work in that's enclosed, people had to build those out before. You look like Doggo Invader built out, breeding areas. You can just grab a tent now, breeding tent. That easy, that simple. Is that essentially what you're doing with your breeding? You got a tent for that, or you?
Yeah, I mean, the pollen's very fine. It'll escape, right? So if I'm growing female plants that I don't want seeded, they're in a completely different room, complete side of the house, and even that's a risk because it can get through your ventilation and go.
Yeah.
So it's not like a full blown.
Yeah, you're not
chamber where. Yeah.
And I think that's where building it out would probably be better than doing that. But I mean, for the in between, if you're just trying to be a hobbyist breeder, set it up in a second
that's
tent.
What I've been doing. Yep.
I think that's for me what I've liked the most is like you were saying, the variety of different for my perpetual grow, and then experiments and having now I've got my organic tent, synthetic tent, veg tent. You know what I'm saying? I've been able to really dial it in. And with the 4x8, I've got like a propagation area, but then I also have vegging and teens. So it works out to have a whole room within a room, like an ecosystem within an ecosystem. And with all the AC Infinity stuff, it's all just kind of daisy chain and connected between everything. But the settings are different based on the controller, which is nice because then I could have the controller on my app and choose which one I'm changing per system. So overall, having that setup that is for me has definitely been a hack for my perpetual grow. Without that, I would have had to build out the room way more to spec. And that, again, I'm no more of a Tim Allen. I was going to say I'm no Tim Allen. Definitely more of a Tim Allen, not his buddy Al.
Yeah, I would give, if someone asked me, I'm going to start growing, what would be some of your biggest tips? And other than mindset and emotion and budget, I would say really consider gardening in a tent because it's going to take a lot of that extra work out of it. You don't have to think about prepping everything. You spend $200, you get a great tent. You don't have to worry about painting. I've painted my room so many times to get it whiter, and it's just a lot of wasted time there that I don't think. And the amount of paint, how much are you going to spend on paint?
Literally, to assemble your room, you're going to spend more money.
You are.
But at one point you wouldn't. I remember again even looking at Gorilla Grow tent, top of the line, but then it was like $1,000. I think at one point for a 5x5, I was like, whoa, I'll just build it. I'm looking for like a 10x10. I don't think I'll spend $1,000 on that. Now we're in a different day and age where you can get tents for under $500. A couple $100, which is really, really nice. Depending on the quality that you're looking for, some people don't really care as much. They're going to put a tent in a closet because they're in an apartment or something. It's more to control the odor and it being exposed to other things, I feel like. Not always to get those benefits like the negative air pressure, the odor control which comes with that. But the advantage side for us is just perpetual grow. I feel like others, it's going to be the stealth grow capabilities. So it's like, I don't know if you guys have ever had those little small short tents. I think they're like 2x4s, but height-wise.
Yeah, we got one on top of it.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We do, a little tiny one. Those ones people use for like microgreens and things like that to grow inside. It's not always just for the plant we love. So like you can be somebody who wants to grow year-round hydroponically in Nevada with for temperature like that, but have a small little tent in the living room even with a nice little AC Infinity light, crank it out automated. So it's like these are things that used to be grow boxes and stuff that'd be thousands and thousands of dollars. You could make like your own little grow box with a grow tent,
Yep. Now, what about number of plants per tent? I know that's a very common question I get all the time, which is how many plants can I put in this size grow tent? And maybe we just go down the line, like in a 2x2 grow space, and a 2x4, and a 3x3.
Yeah.
2x2, what would you guys do for a number of plants in a 2x2? Just one.
I think every tent there's this base number of 1. Because you can grow a beast, like if you saw on Pigeons
Absolutely.
Instagram recently.
Do a
like
5x5 and just do one and spread it out and max it out, yeah.
I think GT also had one recently, just a beast, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we had
So it comes down to personal preference in a
East
way.
Coast Grower too. Shout out to him inside his tent.
Yeah.
I think it was a correction. I think it was his partner, his business partner or something, filled an entire 4x8. He showed us that on the episode when we had him on there at East Coast Grower. Make sure you check that out. It was a scrogging episode, if I'm not mistaken. But yes, sorry. The size, and it really comes down to you can put any amount of plants. See a green in a 4x4 for crying out loud. But optimization.
But comfortable, making things comfortable and stuff. One plant's good. Probably shove 2 plants in there, 2 smaller plants.
If you're going to flower out in there.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Otherwise,
that's what I mean, yeah. Flowering out, complete.
That's the crazy thing too, is so depending on how you're going to go about it, big plants, 1 or 2. A lot of plants, you got to think pot size then. Because it can be... Yeah, because you could still flower out in that with 1 gallons, but then you're watering all the time.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? But then that's that sea of green technique. You could fill it up completely. I think the fine balance is knowing about roughly how much you're going to train the plant, the size of the plant, and that pot size. And then you start to do basic math of, there's this much space. Can I get my hands in here to water these? Okay, I need automated watering. Or I need to have multiple doors on my tent so I can go over. There's a lot of variables to it, but I think going through the list helps. Because 2x4s, start small. I'd say less is more. You know what I'm saying? Too much overcrowded, no plant's going to be optimized to its best point. They're going to...
I'm usually doing about 3 plants in a 2x4.
Yeah.
So 3 smaller plants in a 2x4, that usually gets it almost maxed out and comfortable, depending on how that cultivar grows, obviously. But for the most part, I'm just doing 3 plants in a 2x4.
I like to I like to think of it as the size of your pot in its circumference or its square footing. The size that you increase to pretty much triple the size of what it's going to be by the end. So if you're in a 1 gallon pot, by the time you finish, that plant is going to be about the size of 3 1 gallon pots in space and form, right? And if you're in a 5 gallon pot, your plant's going to take on about 3 times that size, going up and possibly out as well. So that if you're going to be putting any kind of manipulation on your plants, any training, which I highly recommend because then you're going to be able to use less genetics and get the most out of it. I guess that would be a big stipulation. Are you growing them like Christmas trees? Because if you're growing them like Christmas trees, you could probably get away with double in the size. The plant's going to be about double the size of the pot, kind of thing. So if you are going hands-on, well, the plant's not going to grow as tall; it's going to grow wide. So it's going to take up a significant amount of space. And yeah, that's why I'm generally speaking, I'm thinking someone's going to go hands-on, and each plant that I'm visually speaking is probably about 2 feet by 2 feet wide by the end.
Yeah. 2 feet by 2 feet is typically what I go for too. One plant for 2 foot by 2 foot grow space.
Yeah.
If you're those crazy bastards who like to just grow random beans or pheno hunt like a few of us, you plan for that, but then that one cultivar that doubles in size, and you're like, whoa.
Yeah, it'll happen all the time.
Yeah,
it'll happen every time.
So it's that's the one restriction I'd say with a tent versus an open space. It's usually open space, you've got area to walk around because you've set it up that way. You've got potentially an area you can put another light up, more footprint. In a grow tent, you're maxed out.
We saw Jeremy from Build a Soil had a 10 by 10.
Yeah, Trey and his brother have got a 10 by 10. It's like a room you walk into. You know what I'm saying? It looks like
you could walk around the
room.
Yeah, and I see that being the future for a lot of people. I see people wanting to turn their room into a room, and I don't think that you're going to have people who are going to be looking at the cost as much as they are the benefits. Again, that's where you've got the control of the light. You don't have to build out for specs. You don't have to have so much, if you're renting a house or having a future, kids in the future, stuff like that. You have to build out a whole grow room versus a tent that you could just set up and take down and move to another space. So when I'm looking at my plant size, I always take into consideration, I have to reach this limit. So I'll put them in sometimes a little smaller. I'd rather have a little more space than totally maxed out, personally.
Yeah, I'm the same way. If I'm in a 3x3 or a 4x4, 3x3, usually, 3-4 plants, maybe 4 small plants, cramming those in there. But like if I'm in a 4x4, 4 plants is comfortable.
Yep.
5th plant if I'm trying to cram things in.
And I'm
small pots.
a
if
4x4.
anything, like.
Yeah, 4x4 for me. I'm thinking over 2.
2 plants
is probably I could do the 3 in like the triangle pattern. But again, I'm pushing for space, and I much rather get more out of 2 plants.
Yep, just different way to go about
That's
it.
just it. You guys are
can
variety.
veg longer.
We also
You
have
guys are
variety
variety
smokers.
kings, right? And it's
Yeah.
like I get off having 2-3 different strains, cultivars, if you will. So it's like you guys are 14, 7, 8, 25.
Mine all are gassies.
So
What's the point of having multiple different ones, really?
Right,
But, you know.
right. So it's like it's different tokes for different folks, right? It's going to come down to your preference. It's going to come down to your size and how much time do you have. Like if you're going to go a smaller pot size to fit more plants, then expect to be in there more often.
Yeah, you gotta water more often.
I don't have that time. I love the routine of getting in on one day, taking the next day off from routine. I still have to get in there, right? But I don't have to water. I don't have to feed. The next day, that's when I know that I've got to water and I've got to feed.
Yeah. The only thing that's helped me out in those situations so far has been the AC Infinity wicking system, the wicking pots. Those have been real beneficial because it almost is like a extra battery, so to speak, where I'm like, okay, I don't got to water you as often because you're getting wicked, but I still will top water a little bit periodically, just depending on how dry the plant is and how developed the roots are, because they got to be going to the bottom to actually touch the wick to get it up there. But when you're putting in, 6-7 plants in there and you don't have a back door potentially, like how do you even water that? You're potentially breaking plants.
Crawling underneath there.
Yeah.
It's called tent yoga.
Tent yoga.
And you got
arm all the way out.
Your face pressed against the zipper and stuff. Like that's where you have
there
to
are those
consider
devices.
that.
Like I've seen those funnels, those long
and
funnels.
there's the
wands.
wands and
Wands,
stuff.
yeah.
So there is better alternative things than what we're saying. But the main
yoga
point
is
is
going to keep you fit.
I was going to say health is wealth in the
Longevity.
tent, baby. Now, with having, let's say, a 4x4, you can go with that one big monster plant, but that's where you're going to have to veg longer to get to that point.
Yeah, there's compromise for sure.
I'm always a four plant maximum when I'm dealing with a 4x4, just period. I've put more in there, and I've had larfier, not as good results. All the tops are nice. Anything that's covered up because it's such a good canopy of other plants, it's a waste. I could have got the same amount from 2 plants, of better quality buds. Probably the same amount of flower overall, but why do it? Then you got, larger ones again, like the 4x8s. That's what I've rocked there too. If I'm doing trellising or scrogging, I'll probably do maybe 6 in that space. And in the math, you think, 4x4, it's just another spacing out the side. I've noticed with my lights, it becomes too intense because it's 2 lights in there versus 1 light in your 4x4. That reflectivity versus just the poly that I've had in the past becomes a little too much for the cultivars I'm growing. So I tend to do dimming it down and having just wider, larger plants, and then the light's a little bit closer. So I guess it's circumstantial, but I'm rocking those Beast Chiltech X6s. So that's part of it there.
Beasts.
Beasts. 4x8, I'm doing 8 plants comfortably, and then 10 plants.
In a
4x8.
8 plants
Yeah.
comfortably.
8 plant comfortably, and then 2 more. So adding in, so 10 if I'm trying to jam things in there.
And that's for flowering still?
5 on each side. Similar, what?
Still for flowering?
For flowering, yeah.
And I feel like you grow really manageable plants. Like you do a good training to keep them lower.
I don't do a wall to wall. I think that there's a misconception out there that you need to, if you're going to grow tent, you should always keep growing wall to wall, and you should always be maxing out that grow
Square
space.
footage.
It's like, that's back in the day when everyone used to chase after yield, sure, but like
that gram per watt, bro.
how much gram per watt are you getting?
Well, you want quality. You know what I'm saying? You're
Quality
looking
too,
for
yeah.
high quality artesian style flower.
Yep.
And you can't necessarily do that if you're overpacking it and not being able to tend to every portion of it, unless you're making the bottom butt naked and stripping it down. So all you have is what you see, period. And at that point, why have so many plants? That's the argument of less is more, you know what I'm saying? Especially in the tent, because it's like, who knows if that, unless you've grown that cultivar a while, it may not be the scrogger. It may not be the sea of greener that you want. So it's like, you got to experiment before you decide this is my rule of thumb is 4 in this, 3 in this.
Yeah.
Because some will vary with different techniques, different cultivars, different preferences. Just really depends. And I think every tent's different, every grower's different. That's
I'm glad we talked about that because it just shows that there were so many different ways to go about it. And like I said in the beginning of when we started the question, it's just so common. Like so many people are asking.
How many plants do I put?
How
in my
many plants do I
4x4?
put in the space?
There is no answer to it. There is no. What are you looking for? What are you trying to get out of these plants? You know, that's really what it
That
is.
almost has to be a consultation.
Are you looking to take a bounty up to the wife later and be like, look what I did?
Yeah.
Or you're just looking to just hone in those terpenes, hone in those cannabinoids, and just give you what you really want out of that smoke. And it might not give you a pound, and that's okay. One of your biggest video on Garden Talk is why I grow small plants.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that. It's because huge plants come at a cost. It's not for everyone. Variety is king. And, having one plant that you dedicate 5 months to can be a bit overkill. So, I do think the majority of people aren't looking to go wall to wall. So we've kind of looked at, you're setting up a tent, where to get a tent, what to look for in a tent, addressing some main concerns, or that's what I want to focus on. Is now you've got a tent, you've got your light. What are some main concerns that you think people should be focused on when growing specifically in a tent? One example I've got is I've got another one, but one is that my heater. When I first got my heater, I put that bugger right on the floor, and it melted the mylar. Yeah, and second, in the same sentence, the humidifier spills and leaks water everywhere. So I keep it in a pot tray. It keeps it so any overflow is going to land in the tray, and the heater is in the exact same thing. It's in a tray. So it's not going to melt the bottom, and you're not going to have water spill out from your humidifier. Is there anything that stands out growing in a tent that you're like, watch out?
You need to use the AC Infinity humidifier. I was like, leaking all over your tent. What's going on?
No, I do now, but I've got it now.
I've had humidifiers.
But
that
humidifiers
Because I got mine outside of it with the tube going in.
Yep. Pro move. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say environment in general. You know what I mean? I think we kind of touched upon this in the last episode we did about growing in a grow tent, which is like easier said than done controlling your environment. First time I ever fired up a grow tent and put my equipment in there, I was like, heat just rose up like crazy. I'm like, oh, what do I do? Okay, I need to add in cooling now, and figuring out. So I think, like I said, I mentioned this the last time, is put your equipment in there, get it running, and then kind of look at your temperature, humidity, make adjustments to your equipment, whether that be a heater, humidifier, dehumidifier if you need to run one of those. But also measure the lights on, what's your temperature and humidity on, and lights off, and kind of get an idea of how much that's going to dip down. Do you need to add a heater in there because it drops too low? Or if it's dropping down to like 50 degrees Fahrenheit, for example, well, you might need a heater in there because you don't want it to drop that low, for example.
Yeah.
But that whole thing isn't foolproof, because once you have plants in there, it's a little bit different, right? Because plants transpire. So once the lights turn off, the plant's going to continue to transpire, and you're going to see a spike in humidity. So something to keep in mind. It's not foolproof, but definitely testing your equipment in the grow tent before you actually put plants in there can certainly be beneficial.
I'm so glad you said that, because I like to use the analogy of, have you guys ever had a fish? Ever had a fish tank?
Oh, yeah.
They highly recommend when you start up a fish tank to have it run for a week, but so it can filter out all the stuff, can get the water moving, get the chlorine out of there. I don't think you need to run your tent for a week, but I do think a day, minimum, 24 hours. Get both swings, nighttime, daytime. And then, like you said, that's not static. You add the plants in there. Well, as you transition from summer to fall to winter, those temperatures are going to change, right?
Yep.
So having a monitor in there makes a huge difference. And now I'm noticing it seems like every company's coming out with a monitor now. A Pulse and Blue, or Pulse and who's the Niwa?
Niwa, Grow Hub, there's Sensor Push, there's
some of the very
Pulse,
originals.
AC Infinity has monitors.
You can get the pros now, the AC Infinity, that's going to do more than just humidity and CO2 and such. These are huge assets in the garden to help you. It's not going to save you in like a dramatic, but it's definitely going to monitor that plus minus 10, something like that, and
Well, to really help you dial it in versus just, licking the finger and putting it in the air. It's like you really have it, data to work with. And data is so valuable, man. It's insane.
Yep.
Especially in your garden. And I think that test of the day and the night, that's data. That's huge. I would have been great for me to try that one.
Yeah. It works real well. It works real well. And the thing is even too with the inline, how much is your tent going to suck in?
Oh, yeah.
Circulating air. That was one for me. As I pushed that sucker up, I realized, whoa, Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
You got to find that balance of that's that negative air pressure, and finding that balance of that so you can utilize, basically better odor control and being able to get more for your plant, kind of like utilizing VPD and even CO2. I don't even recommend these things unless you're in a tent. I really don't. I feel like, I don't know any of my buddies who've grown over the years, myself included, who's had a perfectly sealed, built grow room to the T. Maybe somebody who's a contractor or builder who already knows that, but none of us, bro, scientists, brotoculturists. So the tent is now where it's like, okay, now start experimenting with these things. Really learn about VPD, dial it in, get that honed in, and utilize that in your tent. Really, if you want to do CO2, well, now you can actually really utilize that. You got it in a controlled space, shut off your ventilation temporarily, get it in there, let it flow, properly operate it, use it when you need to, not just because you want to throw CO2 in your tent, but don't just throw it in an open room and expect it to benefit in there. Like,
Yeah,
I really think
the
that's
challenge for a lot of people with that is the lighting. Once you turn that on, it just boosts up the heat.
Yeah.
Really too high. So it's like adding cooling, and that's the only
That-
downside
yeah,
sometimes
shit.
when somebody's adding in CO2. It's like, hey, just turn off your ventilation. It'll increase the CO2 level, but then the heat goes up because of the lighting there. So
Well, see, and I think that's usually one of those things is like we'll have to get more into a CO2 conversation, but like with
Yeah.
CO2, the plant can handle a little bit more. So it's like, if you're planning for that, my main point is don't even attempt to do some of these things unless you're growing in a tent.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because I just think that there's a lot of misconception that here's the secret sauce to do X, Y, Z. It's like, what are the tools that are being used to make X, Y, Z happen? Got to think about that first, because you could be trying all this stuff, you're throwing circles, but it's a triangle the whole time. It's like, damn, I thought I was doing it right. I've done that so many times with things. Like even again with like utilizing UV lighting, like I didn't necessarily have the capability where I was growing before to do that unless I put more holes in my ceiling. I was like, man. But now with my grow tent, I've got an extra little bar that kind of just hangs out sometimes. That some things hang on it, but most times I've got it on the other setup. I'm like, oh, that's another light rack. Boom, slap it in there, There's so many more things that without a tent I wouldn't even attempt, personally.
Yeah, I think it definitely take into consideration when you're actually. Let me digress a second. We do make it sound like everything's got to be dialed in, and you can grow a plant on a windowsill for crying out loud. So never get discouraged, right? We are advocates for everyone.
Yeah, it
should
doesn't have to
grow.
be perfect.
Everyone should grow, but of course we're trying to dial in our game at this point because we've learned a little bit. We've harvested a few times, and now it's what can we do to step it up, right? That we're always looking for that next big thing. But if you're listening to this thinking I'm never gonna, I just want to. Man, this is never going to work out. No, that's not true. That's not true. You can grow it on the windowsill. You can put an HPS light up in the middle of your basement and have that thing growing. Just maybe get it off the ground.
You heard my story before about parabolic hood with 20-some plants underneath there. They'd be like,
you can make it happen. So I don't want anyone to get discouraged because we get into this pretty deep. But one thing I want to take into consideration when you're gardening is in a tent is the size of your plant does matter. And you need to take that into consideration the entire time you're growing that plant. Biggest issue I had, and I had two issues back to back. The first issue was did not train the plants high enough off the pot to get my watering done. Made it very difficult, very crunch for space. You want to talk about tent yoga? It was tent yoga to the max. And I had to get in real low to try to get in there. Well, the opposite of that was that I in the next grow, I was like, definitely not going to be cramped. I'm going to be able to get under there. Well, shoot, I grew them too high. And guess what you can't do on a tent, or really any room? You can't increase your ceiling.
Yeah.
It's really difficult. So you got to understand that growing in a tent, they're a little bit shorter than most rooms. So you've got a little less room, and with the light hanging in there, and some people like to put their air circs in there. I do recommend if you can get your air filter maybe in there, or the filter itself in there and not the unit, that might save a few inches. But take that space between the pot and the bottom of your canopy into consideration, so that it results in space so that you can get in there, keep the bottom of the plant nice and clean, keep the soil or your medium tended to, but then at the same time, you can also ensure that your buds aren't pushing that light, because the last thing you want is 7-8 weeks of just beautiful flower getting fried by the top of your LED.
Very common problem is grow space.
Well, if you're wall to wall, you can't bend down anymore either. So
No.
You just got to deal with a burnt plant. Too high intensity of light. That's the thing I dealt the first time ever of too intense a light was in a tent.
All of these lights, all these lights on the market right now are freaking intense.
Yeah.
Man. I love my Spider Farmers, man. I love my SE series. I don't run a single one of them at 100%.
No.
So,
Dude, the chill techs that I've got, I've never hit I hit 100% to show
yeah, sure.
how bright they go.
Sure.
I've never grown them in it.
I might have
beasts.
veggies or short ceilings that I've got it full 5 feet high at 100%. But never, they're just so intense that definitely needs to be taken into consideration when growing in a tent. Your space is limited.
Well, if you measure in PPFD, in the par in general, a lot of these tests, if you notice, they're in tents that they're doing these.
Right. Of course they would be, because that's the most
accuracy.
advantageous, right?
Yeah.
You're getting the most photons blasted on that par meter, right?
Yeah. I mean, there isn't all bro science to a lot of these things, man. And it's not us just trying to push it to sell for AC. There's a lot of brands that have amazing tents.
This is an amazing time in the industry right now. This isn't just Gorilla Grow tent.
Anybody can grow now.
And they're not $1,200 a tent. Mammoth had a good one too back in the day, if I'm not mistaken. Mammoth tents? Mammoth Grow tents? No? Anyways, no, maybe it's a different brand. Canadian brand. You guys wouldn't have heard of it.
Canadians, you guys don't know about that.
But this was an incredible conversation. You can tell by how passionate we are that we could probably go on for a part 3. So if there's anything that you guys want to, did we miss something?
Well, especially diving deeper in certain sections of the tent.
For sure, for sure. And the evolution of equipment is or the innovative is always, it's never stopping. There's new pieces all the time. So we want to hear from you guys. Is there anything that you think that we missed? Something, a little bit of advice maybe that you would give somebody starting off in grow tent. Maybe they've never grown before and you think you can give them a little something. Leave it in the comment section below. We want to hear from you. A huge shout out to AC Infinity as always for presenting these shows to you guys. We get to do this every week live in person because you guys believe in us and they believe in us as well. So don't forget to check out acinfinity.com, promo code THESTASH15. Go check out fromthestash.com as well, and go check out everything from some articles, merch, everything the latest FTS. On behalf of myself, Chris, Rob, Wink, we appreciate you guys. Until next time.
Peace.
Peace.